Nobody's controlling migration in this country to the extent that the British people want it controlled. That is the fundamental point. We are still living in the middle of a mass uncontrolled immigration experiment, which is exactly what it is. It is an experiment. It has never been done before in our history, nowhere near this scale. And the vast majority of hardworking, tax-paying, law-abiding people out there in this country want that experiment to end. It's very clear what the British people want. Two things are happening at the same time. The political class has completely lost control of our borders. Illegal migration, the small boat crossings, have never been as high as they are today after not just 1 year of a Labour government, but actually after a succession of uniparty governments on both the left and the right who haven't taken border security seriously. More than 170,000, mainly young men, often from Islamic nations. We don't know who they are. We don't know what they believe, are coming into our country on the small boats. We know they have included Iranian terrorists. We know they have included rapists. And we know they have been organized by people smugglers who have been openly sharing ISIS propaganda. We should declare a state of national emergency and do whatever we need to do to control the borders. And we can come back and talk about that. Yeah. The second thing that is happening at the same time as that is we have a mass legal immigration policy, which has been ushering in millions of people into this country, most of whom are low-skill, low-wage workers from outside of Europe. 81% of all migration into the UK now is coming from outside of European nations, from culturally different, if not incompatible nations: Afghanistan, Iraq, Eritrea, Syria, Pakistan, could go on, China, that I am arguing is now actually undermining the foundations of this country. Those two things are happening at the same time. Most Brits out there want both of those things to stop. They would be broadly comfortable over the longer term with a net migration rate of somewhere between 0 and 50,000 high-skill migrants from culturally compatible nations. Not what we have now, which is masses of low-skill, low-wage migration from outside of Europe. And you say the numbers are coming down. Well, look, if I was debating Keir Starmer, I would say, why is it that net migration into this country is still higher than it was at the time of the vote for Brexit, which was specifically driven by a desire to lower net migration? At that point, it was around 330,000. It's now about 450,000, which means, Winston, we are adding a city, basically the size of Bristol, to the UK population every year, while also thinking we can solve things like the housing crisis and we can deliver a prosperous economy. It's absolutely bananas. The argument for mass migration is falling apart economically, culturally, socially. The evidence is not there to support this project. We can get into that. And I think the British people are basically saying very loudly, in a very clear way, we want an immediate end to this experiment. We want an immediate end to mass uncontrolled legal migration, and we want our borders fixed.
So you've mentioned 170,000 there for border crossings. Sorry, that's presumably channel crossings.
Small boats.
Small boat crossings. Over what period?
Since 2018.
Since 2018. And how many since Starmer's come?
Well, we've had 20,000 this year alone in 2025, and we're forecast to reach over 50,000. So the small boat crossings this year are up 50% on the year before Labour took power, and they're up 80% on 2023. In other words, the illegal migration crisis, the border crisis, is getting worse, not better. Why? Well, not only because nobody in Westminster is willing to do what needs to be done, and I can tell you what needs to be done, but Keir Starmer removed the Rwanda plan, the only deterrent we had. Labour decriminalised illegal migration. They decided that they would put illegal migrants in hotels and accommodation in the heart of British communities, in the very heart of British neighbourhoods.
That was already happening,
They would have
though,
detained, to some extent, but what Labour are doing, not many people know this, what Labour are doing is they are approving the vast majority of asylum claims that are being made in this country, often by people who have come here illegally. And then they're saying to the British people, they're lying to the British people, by the way. They are saying, well, we are returning more people than ever. And actually what they're doing is they're approving the vast majority of asylum claims that are being made here. They're putting those people into private accommodation at the cost of £15 billion over the next decade. And even worse, this is the most outrageous part of this. Keir Starmer and the Labour government are actually using British taxpayers' money to bankroll private companies like Serco to offer more favourable contracts to landlords who take in illegal migrants and asylum seekers over the British people. Let me just be clear as to what I'm saying. The British state is using the British people's money to outbid the British people in their own housing market. How is that fair? How is that just? How is that right? The British people believe in fairness. They believe in a sense of fair play. You come here, you respect the laws, right? What is happening in this country is absolutely absurd. Of course, people are coming. More people are coming than ever because Keir Starmer has basically put a bright, flashing neon sign on the White Cliffs of Dover saying, come on in. We'll give you a smartphone, a cash card, place on the NHS, private place in local schools, private accommodation. We'll give you nice housing. Will basically incentivize you to come rather than provide deterrence. And that's why the crisis is now getting a lot worse.
Have you got a number on the asylum claims being approved?
So Labour are approving somewhere between 60 and 75% of asylum claims in this country.
Do we know how many claims are being made?
I'd need to look up the exact figure, but it's record. I mean, basically, we've got record numbers of asylum applications. The backlog has never been as big as it's been in recent years. And what Labour are doing are just basically stamping claims saying, approve, 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 you can stay. And then they're returning, 7,000, 8,000 people and say, well, look, the returns have never been bigger. But they're gaslighting the British people. And Winston, I'm very concerned because if more than 50,000 illegal migrants are going to come in the rest of 2025, which is a forecast, what on earth is this country going to look like as we get closer to the 2029 general election, with Labour refusing to actually do what needs to be done to fix the borders? I think Keir Starmer has completely lost control of this issue. He doesn't get it. It's a national security issue, and it needs to be dealt with urgently.
Yeah. So let's hone in then on the channel crossings, right? So you've said some of the numbers, and you have also suggested that the reason it's increased is because Starmer put the kibosh in the Rwanda deal program.
That's one of the reasons.
That's one of the reasons. What are the other reasons?
We're soft touch. Our welfare regime is basically way too generous. We allow anybody who makes it here illegally to stay in the country. There was an interesting investigation by the Sun newspaper recently where a journalist posed as an illegal migrant from Afghanistan, and within minutes was delivering takeaways for Just Eat. We have an economy that allows illegal migrants to basically work in the black economy. We have a political system that gives people incentives to come over. Thomas Sowell once said, immigration laws are the only laws that are ever discussed in terms of how to help people break them. And that is exactly what is happening today. Starmer, the Tories too, by the way, they completely failed on this issue. We have a political system that is allowing people to break our laws. So we become a soft touch. Do you think for a second this would happen in Arab states, that people would allow this degree of law breaking?
Well, it happened in America under Biden. But maybe we can talk about how Trump's success and failures dealing with it might guide us in Britain. But just so your argument then for Starmer being encouraging the border crossings is that there are incentives on the other side once they get here, as well as the Rwanda deal. Is that
we don't detain and deport. We should be detaining and deporting everybody who arrives here illegally, and we should be processing them offshore, which is what the Rwanda plan was going to do. The problem with the Rwanda plan is it didn't quite establish the supremacy of UK law. Some of those illegal migrants could have still claimed against it using European conventions and laws. My argument is, if you arrive illegally, detain, deport. If you're already here illegally, deport. That is a policy, by the way, supported by the vast majority of British people. Everybody in Westminster will raise their hands and say, oh my God, I can't believe what Matt Goodwin's just said. We need to be deporting all of these people. Who on earth supports that? 81% of Brits in a survey just said they want all foreign criminals removed from the UK. We have over 10,000 foreign criminals in our prisons. The British public are way more on side with this than their politicians would like to think.
Okay, so deport to where?
Well, firstly, those that we can deport back to their countries of origin, we do so. Take an example like Pakistani Muslim rape gang members, dual nationals who are here, who have broken our laws, go back to Pakistan. If Pakistan doesn't take them, we use visa penalties, we start using foreign aid. We say, well, why are we giving you £133 million in a year? Why are we giving you this many visas? If you're not going to take back these guys, well, we're going to start playing hardball, which is actually, by the way, is what Trump is doing. So we should not be having people coming into our country breaking our laws. They need to go. So in order to,
so countries that we are paying foreign aid to, we would use that as leverage against them and say you have to take them.
That's one of the things we could do.
What are the other ways?
I would argue what we are basically going to need in this country, what all of this is building up to, is a complete reshaping of the institutional legal architecture that surrounds our political system. We need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, the ECHR, so we can deport foreign criminals and we can deport illegal migrants who are currently using Articles 3 and 8 of the ECHR to stay in the country. As a consequence of that, we need to reform Tony Blair's Human Rights Act, which entrenches the ECHR into domestic UK law. We need to radically reform the welfare regime, so we are not a soft touch for people who break our laws. And we need to establish a new principle in this country, which is what I would call a principle of national preference. It is the hard-working, law-abiding, tax-paying British people who are put first, not people who break our laws and have only been in the country for 2 minutes. It's that principle of national preference, treating taxpayers, treating citizens with the respect they deserve. I'm going to give you one example. You tell me, Winston, how is it right or fair that we have just heard about a case to do with an Albanian criminal, drug dealer, robber, thief, has 50 convictions, 50 convictions, was imprisoned in Italy, came to the UK, and then used our immigration tribunal system to stay in the UK. Why is that person in our country? Why is our immigration system and why are our judges and lawyers working to keep those people in our country? And, there are horrific examples. I could give you dozens of examples, but the one that sticks in my mind is the Afghan illegal migrant who came to the UK, told state authorities he was 14 years of age, was put into a local secondary school alongside British children. Even a dentist at the time was saying, there's no way this guy's 14. Turns out he was 19 and had already killed 2 men in, I think it was Serbia, and went on to kill a young lad, British lad called Thomas Roberts, who was an aspiring Marine. He wanted to join the Marines. And in Bournemouth, this Afghan illegal migrant killed Thomas Roberts with a machete. Why are these people in our country? That's my view. Why are these people in our country? If we do not control the borders and stop these people from coming in, the social contract will break down. And that's my bigger concern, that actually this isn't really about illegal migration in that sense. It is about the social contract whereby people are willing to trust the system. They're willing to pay into the system, to pay tax, to do their bit, to contribute to the collective pot. If you keep subjecting the British people to this insanity, to this experiment, they will withdraw their support for the system, which is, by the way, what we saw in the aftermath of Southport. That is what we saw in the aftermath of the Southport atrocities, where basically there wasn't an organised far-right conspiracy. As we now know from the police constabulary reports, it was actually much more troubling for the establishment. It was organic. It was ordinary men and women protesting about these failing policies of mass uncontrolled immigration, broken borders, all of which have brought the likes of Axel, Ruda Cabana, and many other evil people into our country. And the Brits have had enough.
We've seen that brewing for a long time. And if you were paying attention, what happened in Knowsley at the beginning of 23 was that there was someone caught, a migrant from a migrant hotel was caught on video making a pass at a young teenage local girl, and the police failed to deal with it, and then riots broke out. That was exact precursor to what happened in 2024, a month after Starmer came to power. It's like the utter failure to deal with this situation. All these migrants get dumped in the most deprived parts of Britain, and it's, as you say, mainly men, and they do all sordid things with young girls.
Here's the important point many people out there won't realise. it's not just these isolated examples. The evidence now shows that mass uncontrolled immigration is driving crime. We know, thanks to freedom of information requests that have been submitted by independent campaigners, that foreign nationals in this country are twice as likely as Brits to be arrested and convicted of crimes, and are 3.5 times more likely than Brits to be arrested for rape and sexual offences. We know that from freedom of information requests. Afghans, Eritreans, specific groups are up to 20 times more likely than the British people to be arrested for those offences. Now, so here's my question. I have 2 questions for the state. One, why are you not releasing this information to people? Why is it taking independent campaigners to submit freedom of information requests? Because you tell us we're misinformed. Keir Starmer tells us it's misinformation. Yvette Cooper tells us it's disinformation. Well, if you're accusing people of that while simultaneously refusing to share information about what is actually happening in British society, that is deeply unfair and hypocritical. Let's get all the data onto the table, because the data that we have, the information that we have, shows that mass immigration is driving crime. It shows that mass immigration is bad for the economy. It's taking more out of the collective pot than it's putting in. Even the Office for Budget Responsibility now quietly accepts that. And so what I think we have in this country is a political and expert class that views pro-immigration, their support for mass immigration, as a religion. They are basically fanatical about it, even when the evidence shows very clearly this policy is driving up crime, driving up rents and property prices, driving up poverty and making our economy weaker, and also making the social contract, the social fabric weaker and more vulnerable. Somebody just needs to be real with the British people about it. We need a politics that reflects the fact that this policy no longer makes any sense.